My name is Chelsea, and at 29, I never imagined a simple notification would shatter my entire world. While preparing Thanksgiving dinner for 20 family members, my phone buzzed with a video from Dad. What I saw made my hands shake uncontrollably. There was my father, mother, sister Brittany, and her husband Jake sitting in our living room, wine glasses raised, laughing about their glorified servant who did everything while they lived their best lives. That servant, me. Before we dive into this heartbreaking story of family betrayal and ultimate triumph, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Please hit that like button if you've ever felt unappreciated by family, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that will touch your heart. Trust me, what happens next in my journey from being my family's doormat to finding my freedom will leave you absolutely speechless. Looking back now, I can see how perfectly they had orchestrated my life to serve their needs. Every single day for the past 7 years had followed the same exhausting pattern. My alarm would scream at 4:30 in the morning, and I'd drag myself out of bed to prepare breakfast for my entire family before my 5 a.m. shift at Riverside General Hospital. I'd carefully arrange Mom's medications, pack Dad's lunch with his specific dietary requirements, and leave sticky notes reminding Brittany about her appointments that I had scheduled and would pay for. My nursing job was demanding enough dealing with critical care patients for 12-hour shifts, but that was just the beginning of my daily marathon. I'd return home around 6 p.m. to find the house in complete chaos. Dishes piled high from the breakfast I'd made and the lunch they'd prepared for themselves, laundry overflowing from every hamper, and my family lounging in the living room waiting for dinner. "Chelsea's home," Dad would announce cheerfully, as if I was their personal chef arriving to prepare their evening feast. The financial burden was even more crushing than the physical exhaustion. Despite both my parents having steady jobs, Dad as a warehouse supervisor and Mom as a receptionist at a dental office, somehow I was paying 70% of the household bills. My bank statements told a story of constant withdrawals, 800 for Mom's emergency dental work. That insurance supposedly didn't cover 1,500 for Dad's truck repairs, and countless transfers to Brittany for her endless stream of crises. Brittany, my younger sister at 26, had perfected the art of manufactured emergencies. Every month brought a new catastrophe that only money could solve. Her car would mysteriously break down right before rent was due. Her hours at the boutique would get cut just when she needed to pay her credit card bills. She developed sudden illnesses requiring expensive treatments, not covered by her terrible insurance. Each time, our parents would turn to me with concerned faces. "Family helps family," Mom would say, her voice dripping with expectation. "You make good money at the hospital and Brittany's struggling." What they didn't mention was that Brittany's Instagram told a different story entirely. Designer handbags, weekend trips to Miami, expensive dinners at restaurants I could never afford. When I'd bring this up, she'd wave her hand dismissively. "Those were gifts from friends," she'd claim, or "Jake surprised me." Jake, her husband of 3 years, was perhaps the most infuriating piece of this toxic puzzle. He'd been living in our basement temporarily while he looked for the right opportunity. That temporary situation had stretched into 3 years of free rent, free meals, and zero contribution to household expenses. "The economy's tough right now," Jake would say, whenever anyone questioned his unemployment, usually while playing video games on the 70-inch TV I'd bought for the family room. He'd turned down at least 6 job offers that I knew of, always finding fault with the salary, the hours, or the commute. Meanwhile, he had no problem eating the food I bought, using the utilities I paid for, and treating our home like his personal hotel. My daily routine had become a soul-crushing cycle of servitude. After dinner, which I cooked while everyone else relaxed, I'd clean the kitchen alone. "Chelsea doesn't mind," Mom would tell any relatives who offered to help. "She likes things done her way." Then came the laundry, because apparently no one else in the house understood how to operate the washing machine I'd purchased. I'd iron Dad's work shirts while he watched sports fold Brittany's expensive clothes, while she FaceTimed friends and sort Jake's gaming jerseys while he raided our refrigerator for midnight snacks. The few times I tried to establish boundaries or ask for help, I was met with guilt trips that would make anyone crumble. After all we've done for you, Dad would say conveniently, forgetting that I'd been financially supporting them since I graduated nursing school. I didn't raise you to be selfish, Mom would add, tears forming in her eyes. We're getting older, Chelsea. Who else can we depend on if not our own daughter? My friends watched this dysfunction with growing alarm. You're killing yourself for people who don't appreciate you. My best friend Lauren would say during our rare coffee dates that I'd usually have to cut short for some family emergency. When was the last time you did something just for yourself? I couldn't remember. Every vacation day was used for driving family members to appointments. Every bonus went to covering their unexpected expenses. Every raise just meant they felt comfortable asking for more. My health was deteriorating rapidly from the constant stress and exhaustion. Chronic headaches had become my norm. I'd lost 15 pounds in the past year, not from healthy habits, but from skipping meals to save money and time. Dark circles had become permanent fixtures under my eyes, and more than one patient had asked if I was feeling all right. My supervisors had noticed too, gently suggesting I take some time off, not knowing that time off just meant more hours serving my family without the escape of work. The most painful part was watching how differently they treated Brittany. While I was criticized for buying generic groceries to save money, Brittany was praised for her shopping savvy when she'd show up with designer goods. When I missed family events due to work obligations at the hospital, I was selfish and career-obsessed. When Brittany skipped Sunday dinners to go to brunch with friends, she was living her life and so social. The double standard was glaring, but pointing it out only made me seem jealous and petty in their eyes. Even my romantic life had become a casualty of their demands. I'd been dating Michael for 2 years, a kind pediatric physician who understood my dedication to family, but grew increasingly frustrated with our constantly canceled plans. They're taking advantage of you, he'd say gently after yet another ruined date night because Mom suddenly needed me to drive her somewhere, or Dad had a project that couldn't wait. I'd defend them, making excuses explaining how family comes first, even as I watched the hurt in his eyes. Some nights after everyone had gone to bed in the rooms I cleaned, wearing the clothes I washed full from the dinner I cooked, I'd sit in my car in the driveway and cry. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet tears of exhaustion and resignation. This was my life, I'd tell myself. This was what good daughters did. They sacrificed. They served. They put family first always, even when that family saw them as nothing more than a convenient resource to exploit. I had no idea that everything was about to change with one accidentally sent video, or that my family had been laughing at my devotion behind closed doors, planning new ways to use me while mocking the very love that kept me trapped in their web of manipulation. The video arrived at 2:43 p.m. on Thursday, while I was elbow-deep in turkey preparation and managing 4 different side dishes simultaneously. My phone propped against the kitchen backsplash lit up with a message from Dad. "Thought you'd want to see this." The text read, followed by a video attachment. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another one of his forwarded jokes or political rants, but something made me tap play while stirring the cranberry sauce. The image was slightly shaky at first, as if someone was trying to balance the phone while recording secretly. Then it stabilized, and I saw my family gathered in our living room just the night before. They were drinking wine-expensive bottles I recognized from the collection I'd bought Dad for his birthday. What struck me first wasn't their words, but their postures, relaxed, comfortable, conspiratorial. This was clearly a private moment they thought I'd never witness. To our personal servant getting everything ready for tomorrow. Dad raised his glass and the others burst into laughter. My stirring hand froze as Mom chimed in, her voice bright with amusement. 23 dishes because I specifically requested each one. She'll be cooking until midnight, the fool. The cranberry sauce bubbled over, splattering the stovetop, but I couldn't move. I was transfixed by the casual cruelty in voices I'd trusted my entire life. Brittany's contribution made my stomach turn. You know what's hilarious? She actually thinks we need her help. Like, I have 60,000 in savings right now, but why spend it when Chelsea's so eager to play family savior? She took a long sip of wine, my wine, and continued. Last week I told her my car needed a new transmission. $2,000 just like that? The car's perfect, but she didn't even question it. Jake's laughter boomed through my phone speakers. Free rent for 3 years and counting. I turned down that management position at Target last month. Why would I work when we've got Chelsea? She even does my laundry. It's like having a live-in maid who pays us for the privilege. He high-fived my father, both men grinning like they'd won the lottery. In a way, they had. They'd won me their personal ATM, and housekeeper rolled into one pathetic package. The conversation took an even darker turn as Mom leaned forward, her face flushed with wine and malice. The best part is how we trained her from childhood. Remember, honey? She looked at Dad with genuine affection, always telling her that good girls help family, that selfish people end up alone. She bought every word. Dad nodded proudly. Psychological conditioning at its finest. She'll never realize we could easily afford everything ourselves. My pension alone covers the mortgage. But why mention that? She's looking so old lately, Brittany observed with fake concern. All those double shifts and stress. She's 29 but looks 35 at least. Pretty soon she'll be too worn down to find anyone, and then we'll have her forever. The casual discussion of my appearance, my future, my life as if I were livestock they were breeding for service, made me physically ill. I gripped the counter to keep from collapsing. The planning session that followed was even more disturbing. They discussed their post-Thanksgiving strategy like generals planning a campaign. Mom wanted to develop a mysterious illness requiring expensive specialists. Dad thought they should claim the roof needed emergency repairs. Brittany was pushing for a fake business opportunity that would require significant investment. Jake suggested they could all pile on at once, overwhelming me into compliance through sheer volume of manufactured crises. The key is timing. Dad explained clearly, the ringleader of this operation. Hit her when she's vulnerable, after holidays when she's feeling grateful for family, or during her busy periods at work when she doesn't have time to think things through. That's when we got the kitchen remodel money last year, remember? She was so exhausted, she just wrote the check to make us stop asking. Mom's contribution was particularly cruel. I've been telling everyone at church how devoted she is, how she sacrifices everything for family. Now she can't say no without looking like a bad Christian. Public perception is everything. She'd rather go broke than have people think poorly of her. They all murmured agreement, pleased with this additional manipulation tactic. What about Michael? Jake asked. He seems to be getting suspicious of us. Brittany waved dismissively. Please, Chelsea will never choose him over us. We've made sure of that. Every time they plan something, one of us has an emergency. Eventually he'll give up. Men always do when they realize they're competing with family obligations. Then she'll be even more isolated and dependent on our approval. The cruelest moment came near the end of the recording. Dad raised his glass again for what seemed to be their favorite toast. To Chelsea, he said solemnly, and the others lifted their glasses. Our glorified servant. May she never wise up to what she really is to us, nothing but a resource to be drained dry. They clinked glasses while I watched my phone screen through tears I hadn't realized were falling. You know what she said last week? Mom added with barely contained glee. She apologized for buying generic pasta to save money. Apologized as if we care what brand it is when she's paying for everything anyway. I told her name brand was important for Dad's digestion, and she believed it. The laughter that followed was the sound of my heart shattering into pieces I wasn't sure could ever be reassembled. The video ended abruptly, followed immediately by another text from Dad. Wrong person. Delete that now. Then another. Chelsea, that wasn't meant for you. Then frantic calling that I didn't answer. I played the video again, then again, each viewing revealing new details that cut deeper. The comfortable way they discussed my exploitation. The inside jokes about my gullibility. The future plans to drain even more from me. The complete absence of any genuine affection or concern for my well-being. I sank to the kitchen floor, still clutching my phone, surrounded by the Thanksgiving feast I was preparing for people who saw me as nothing more than a convenient servant. The turkey sat half-stuffed on the counter. Pies cooled on racks I'd bought. Every surface was covered with evidence of my devotion to people who laughed at that very devotion behind my back. The recurring phrase echoed in my mind, glorified servant. That's all I was to them. All I'd ever been. My phone exploded with messages. Dad trying to explain. Mom sending novel-length texts about misunderstandings. Brittany claiming the video was a joke taken out of context. Jake threatening legal action if I shared it with anyone. But there was no context that could soften what I'd seen. No explanation that could undo the casual cruelty of their words. No joke that could make their exploitation amusing rather than devastating. As I sat on that kitchen floor, something shifted inside me. The tears stopped. The shaking stilled. A strange calm settled over me as I realized I had 24 hours before they'd all arrive for Thanksgiving dinner. 24 hours to decide what to do with the truth I'd accidentally received. 24 hours to choose between continuing as their glorified servant or finally setting myself free. I stood up slowly, saved the video to multiple locations, and returned to cooking. But now I had a plan, forming one that would serve them something they'd never forget, along with their turkey and stuffing. I spent the rest of Thursday evening and night in a strange state of focused determination. My hands moved automatically, preparing dish after dish, while my mind raced with possibilities. Every few minutes, my phone would buzz with another message from my family, their panic escalating with each unanswered text. By midnight, I had completed all 23 dishes. Mom had requested each one perfect because even in my fury, I couldn't bring myself to do less than my best. But this would be the last time. Friday morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood perfectly. I'd managed 3 hours of sleep, spending most of the night transferring money to a private account, gathering important documents, and making copies of every financial record showing my contributions to the household. The evidence was overwhelming when laid out systematically: over $200,000 in the past 5 years alone, not counting the free labor, the missed opportunities, the sacrificed dreams. The family began arriving at noon, and their performance was Oscar-worthy. Dad entered first, pulling me into a hug that felt like being embraced by a snake. "My beautiful daughter," he said loudly enough for the arriving relatives to hear. "Always taking such good care of us." His eyes searched mine for any sign I'd seen the video, but I'd become an excellent actress myself, trained by years of hiding exhaustion and resentment. I smiled warmly and thanked him for coming. Mom swept in carrying her famous green bean casserole, the one dish she contributed each year, acting as if this singular effort balanced against my 23. "Oh, Chelsea, everything smells wonderful. You've outdone yourself again." She air-kissed my cheek, and I fought the urge to recoil from her touch. Behind her, aunts and uncles filed in, bearing wine and flowers and compliments about how lucky my parents were to have such a devoted daughter. Brittany's entrance was particularly theatrical. She arrived in a new designer dress, probably purchased with the transmission money, trailing expensive perfume and false concern. "Sister, you look tired. You should have let me help with the cooking." The lie rolled off her tongue so easily, just as I'd heard her practice in the video. Jake followed, slapping my shoulder with fake camaraderie, while his eyes inventoried the spread, calculating how many plates he could consume. The pre-dinner socializing followed its usual pattern, but now I saw it with crystal clarity. Family members approached me with requests disguised as casual conversation. Could I look at Cousin Fred's resume? Would I mind driving Aunt Helen to her doctor's appointments next month? Did I know anyone at the hospital who could help with Uncle Carl's medical bills? Each request was presented as if I had unlimited time and resources, as if my own life existed solely to solve their problems. Then came Brittany's performance, timed perfectly as relatives settled with appetizers. "Chelsea?" she said, her voice pitched to Carrie. "I hate to bring this up during family time, but I have a small emergency." She glanced around, ensuring maximum audience. "My landlord just called. They're demanding $3,000 by Monday for some damage they claim happened to the apartment. It's completely unfair, but if I don't pay, they'll evict me." She let tears well in her eyes, a skill she'd perfected over years of manipulation. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me. This was the trap they'd perfected: public pressure combined with family obligation. In the past, I would have immediately offered to help, but instead, I tilted my head with concern. "That's terrible, Brittany. Do you have photos of this damage? We should fight it if it's unfair." Her eyes widened slightly at my unexpected response. "Well, no, I mean, it's complicated. Can't you just help me out? You know I'm good for it." "Of course you are," I agreed pleasantly. "Just like you were good for the transmission money last week. How's your car running, by the way?" The flash of panic in her eyes was satisfying, but she recovered quickly. "Perfect, thanks to you. Family helps family, right?" She looked to our parents for support, and they immediately joined the chorus. "Chelsea, don't interrogate your sister," Mom scolded. "She's in trouble and needs help." The meal itself was a masterclass in their usual behavior amplified. Mom criticized the turkey temperature, claiming it was slightly dry while loading her third helping. Dad complained about the wine selection while draining bottle after bottle. Jake actually had the audacity to mention that the mashed potatoes needed more butter, speaking through a mouthful of food I'd spent hours preparing. Each complaint was a tiny knife, but I smiled through it all, playing my part one final time. Between courses, I noticed them implementing their strategies from the video. Mom developed a sudden dizzy spell, clutching her chest dramatically. "It's probably nothing," she gasped, "but my doctor wants to run some expensive tests. Insurance won't cover experimental procedures." Dad jumped in with roof concerns, pointing to imaginary water stains on the ceiling. "Going to cost at least $15,000 to prevent total collapse," he declared with the confidence of someone who'd never actually gotten a professional estimate. Aunt Martha, my father's sister and the only relative I truly trusted, watched these performances with knowing eyes. She'd been catching my gaze all evening, her expression growing more concerned as she witnessed the dysfunction I'd hidden for years. When Jake started his speech about a revolutionary business opportunity that just needed startup capital, she finally spoke up. "Interesting how all these emergencies happen at family gatherings. Almost like they're coordinated." The room went cold. Dad turned on his sister with barely concealed fury. "Martha, I don't appreciate your implications. We're a close family who supports each other. Maybe if you understood that your own children would visit more." It was a low blow, and I saw Martha flinch. But she held her ground, looking directly at me. "Some support goes only one direction, doesn't it, Chelsea?" As dessert was served, the attacks intensified. Brittany, sensing she was losing control of her $3,000 narrative, tried a different approach. "You know, Chelsea, some of us were talking about how you never seem happy anymore. Always stressed, always tired. Maybe if you weren't so controlling about money, you'd enjoy life more." Several relatives murmured agreement, programmed by years of my family's propaganda about my supposed selfishness. I excused myself to the kitchen ostensibly to get more pie, but actually to prepare for what came next. I could hear them talking about me through the door, their voices carrying clearly. "She's getting difficult," Mom said. "We may need to intervene more directly." Or find ways to make her more dependent on us, Dad suggested. Maybe it's time she moved back home full-time. For her own good, of course. When I returned with the final dessert course, I also carried my laptop already connected to the living room TV. Before we finished dinner, I announced, my voice steady, despite my racing heart. I have something special to share with everyone, a video that perfectly captures what family means to us. Brittany's fork clattered to her plate. Jake pushed back from the table. Mom's face drained of color. Dad half rose from his chair. Chelsea, he warned, but I was already pressing play. The room filled with their voices from the video crystal clear on the surround sound system I'd installed last Christmas. Their own words condemning them: glorified servant, psychological conditioning, resource to be drained dry. Every cruel laugh, every calculated plan, every moment of their recorded betrayal played out before the stunned audience of extended family. Some gasped. Others covered their mouths in shock. Aunt Martha looked grimly satisfied, as if her worst suspicions had been confirmed. The silence that followed the video's end was deafening. Then chaos erupted. Brittany lunged for my laptop, screaming about privacy violations and edited footage. Jake threatened to sue for defamation while simultaneously trying to grab my phone. Mom collapsed into theatrical tears, wailing about being misunderstood and taken out of context. Dad's approach was more direct, pure rage. How dare you embarrass us like this after everything we've done for you? Everything you've done. I finally found my voice, years of suppressed anger powering my words. You mean taking my money, stealing my time, mocking my love for you? Which part exactly should I be grateful for? I turned to the relatives watching in stunned silence. Would anyone like to see the financial records? The bank statements showing who really pays for this house. The messages begging for money while they vacation and shop. What followed was a revelation that went far beyond what I'd expected. Uncle Tom, Dad's brother, suddenly spoke up. Is this why you told us Chelsea refused to contribute to Mom's nursing home care? You said she was selfish? But you were taking her money all along. Cousin Amy added her voice. Brittany told me Chelsea was stingy and wouldn't help with her wedding, but she posted pictures from Vegas that same weekend. The family's carefully constructed narrative began unraveling as relative after relative shared stories that suddenly made sense in light of what they'd witnessed. My parents had painted me as selfish and difficult to extract money from other family members, claiming I refused to help while simultaneously draining me dry. The scope of their deception was breathtaking, and the backlash was immediate and severe. Grandmother's best friend Eleanor, who'd been invited as an honorary family member, dropped the biggest bombshell. This explains why your parents contested your grandmother's will. She left the house to Chelsea specifically, but they convinced the lawyer there must have been a mistake. I never understood why Chelsea agreed to let them keep living here. The room turned to stare at me, and I felt my last piece of innocence shatter. Even the house I'd been paying for was actually mine, stolen through yet another manipulation. The revelation about the house sparked an even more explosive confrontation. I stood in the center of the room, surrounded by the wreckage of our family dinner and the shattered illusions of 24 relatives. You stole my inheritance. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Grandmother left me the house and you convinced me it was a mistake. Dad's face cycled through emotions like a broken slot machine. Anger, guilt, defiance finally settling on his default manipulation. You were too young to handle property ownership. We were protecting you, protecting me. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Like you protected my college fund. Oh yes, Uncle Tom mentioned that earlier. Where did that money go? Dad into Brittany's shopping sprees, Jake's gaming setup, your boat that you sold after 6 months. Each question landed like a physical blow, and I watched him shrink with every word. The powerful man who'd controlled my life for years suddenly looked small and pathetic. Mom tried a different approach, clutching her chest dramatically. My heart, she gasped. The stress. Chelsea, how could you do this to someone in my condition? But Aunt Martha had heard enough. Drop the act, Linda. You've been faking heart problems for 20 years. Remember when you miraculously recovered during your cruise to Bermuda, the one Chelsea probably paid for? Mom's fake medical emergency evaporated instantly, replaced by vicious anger. You've all turned against us, she spat, looking around the room at relatives who were finally seeing through their facade, believing her lies over your own family. But I was ready with evidence. I pulled out my phone and cast document after document to the TV screen. Bank statements showing my deposits covering their bills. Text messages begging for money with increasingly creative emergencies. Photos from their social media showing expensive purchases made while claiming poverty. Brittany attempted damage control, her voice shifting to the sweet tone she used for manipulation. Chelsea, sister, let's talk about this privately. We don't need to air family business in front of everyone. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Family business? Like how you have 60,000 in savings while taking money from me for fake emergencies? That kind of family business? Her mask finally slipped completely. You stupid bitch, she snarled. You were supposed to keep playing along. Too dumb to figure it out, too pathetic to stand up for yourself. Jake made the mistake of trying physical intimidation, stepping into my space with his chest puffed out. You need to shut this down right now, or things are going to get ugly. But before I could respond, Michael appeared at my side. I hadn't even heard him arrive, but there he was, all 6 feet of protective boyfriend. Touch her and find out how ugly things can really get, he said quietly. Jake immediately backed down, the coward he'd always been when faced with someone his own size. The evidence presentation continued relentlessly. I showed screenshots of Brittany bragging in group chats about scamming me. Got another $2,000 from SIS. Vegas weekend secured. One message read. Another showed her coaching a friend on how to manipulate family members. The key is making them think it's their idea to help. Chelsea falls for it every time. The friend had eventually felt guilty and forwarded me the entire conversation. Dad made one last attempt to regain control. Even if all this is true, we're still your family. You don't abandon family over money. The hypocrisy was staggering. Abandon, like how you abandoned me every day for 7 years. I was drowning right in front of you, and you held my head underwater while laughing about it. I pulled up the video again, freezing on the frame where they toasted to their glorified servant. This is abandonment. This is betrayal. This is abuse. Uncle Tom stood up slowly, his face grave. There's something else everyone should know. Mom didn't just leave Chelsea the house. She left a letter explaining why. She knew what you were doing to her, David. She saw how you treated your daughter like a servant while spoiling Brittany. The will was very specific, and you committed fraud by hiding it. He pulled out a manila envelope I'd never seen before. I've kept a copy all these years, hoping you'd do the right thing. The letter was read aloud, and grandmother's words from beyond the grave felt like a warm embrace. She'd seen everything, the favoritism, the manipulation, the way they'd groomed me from childhood to serve others while never receiving love in return. She'd left me the house specifically so I'd have security away from them. Her final words brought tears to my eyes. My dear Chelsea, you deserve so much more than being anyone's servant. This house is your freedom. Use it wisely. Mom's response was to grab a serving platter and hurl it at the wall, sending china and cranberry sauce exploding across the dining room. That old witch never understood our family dynamics. We raised Chelsea to be helpful, to contribute. There's nothing wrong with that. But the room had turned against them completely. Relatives were gathering their things, some stopping to hug me or slip me notes of support, others simply fleeing the toxicity they'd finally recognized. You want to destroy this family? Dad roared, his face purple with rage. Fine. You're no daughter of mine. Get out of our house. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Your house. I pulled out the legal documents I'd had a lawyer friend prepare earlier that week. According to these papers and grandmother's will, this is my house. You've been squatting here for 5 years. So let me correct you. Get out of my house. Brittany made a tactical error by turning on Jake. This is your fault. You said she'd never find out. You said we could milk this for another decade at least. Jake snarled back. My fault. You're the one who couldn't keep your mouth shut, bragging about the money constantly. Their marriage imploded in real time as they blamed each other for the exposure of their scheme, each revealing more damning details about their plans to exploit me further. I stood in the center of the chaos, feeling strangely calm. Around me, my family members raged and blamed and threatened, but their power over me had evaporated. The cousin who'd forwarded Brittany's messages came forward with more evidence. The neighbor who'd overheard Mom laughing about my gullibility offered to testify. Even the mailman mentioned he'd wondered why I received so many final notice bills for a house I didn't own. As the truth avalanche continued, something beautiful happened. The family members who genuinely cared about me began forming a protective circle. Aunt Martha took charge, her commanding presence filling the room. David, Linda, you have 1 hour to pack essentials and leave. Chelsea will arrange for you to collect your belongings under supervision. Any attempt to contact her, harass her, or damage her property will result in immediate police involvement. You can't do this, Mom shrieked. We have rights. We've lived here for years. But Michael, bless him, had already called a police officer friend who arrived to keep the peace. Officer Martinez listened to a brief explanation, watched a portion of the video, and made it clear that I was within my rights to remove them from my property. The legal weight of their fraud regarding the will would be addressed separately, but tonight, they had to go. The next hour was a whirlwind of frantic packing and vicious threats. Dad promised to ruin my reputation at the hospital. Mom swore I'd regret this when I was old and alone. Brittany screamed that I was jealous of her beauty and success. Jake muttered about knowing people who could make my life difficult. But their threats felt hollow now, the last gasps of bullies who'd lost their favorite victim. As they were escorted out, garbage bags of hastily packed clothes in hand, Dad turned for one final manipulation. When you're alone on Christmas morning, remember this moment. Remember how you chose strangers over your own parents. But I was ready. I'll be spending Christmas with people who actually love me, not servants who pay for the privilege of being mocked. Goodbye, Dad. The door closed on their protests, and I found myself surrounded by the relatives who'd chosen to stay. Aunt Martha pulled me into the first genuine hug I'd received from family in years. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. Your grandmother would be too. Others echoed her sentiments, sharing their own stories of smaller manipulations they'd experienced, but never understood until tonight. The family that remained wasn't bound by blood, but by genuine care and respect. The retaliation began before the sun rose on Saturday. I woke to find my car's tires slashed and "ungrateful bitch" spray-painted across the windshield. The security cameras I'd installed months earlier captured Jake doing the damage at 3 a.m., his face clearly visible in the motion sensor lights. What he didn't know was that I'd anticipated this exact response and had parked my actual car in the garage, leaving an old junker I'd bought for $200 as bait in the driveway. By noon, Brittany had launched a social media campaign that would have destroyed me if I hadn't been prepared. She posted edited versions of our family photos with captions about how I'd stolen her inheritance and thrown our elderly parents onto the street. She tagged every mutual acquaintance, every coworker she could find, even patients who'd friended me on Facebook. But Cousin Amy and her tech-savvy friends were faster responding to each post with screenshots of Brittany's own messages bragging about scamming me. The workplace harassment started Monday morning. I arrived at the hospital to find HR waiting with concerned expressions. We've received some disturbing calls about your mental state and fitness for duty, the director explained carefully. Your parents claim you've had a psychotic break and might be dangerous to patients. I'd come prepared with my own documentation, including the original video and a letter from my therapist confirming my mental stability. By the end of the meeting, HR was more concerned about protecting me from my family than investigating their claims. Mom's fake medical emergency escalated quickly. She showed up at my hospital claiming chest pains, demanding I be called to treat her. When the ER staff followed protocol instead, she began screaming that I was denying her medical care, that a daughter who would let her mother die was working in their hospital. Security footage showed her perfectly healthy until she saw cameras then suddenly clutching her chest. Dr. Rodriguez, who'd witnessed many of her performances over the years, documented it as manipulation and attention-seeking behavior. The financial warfare was more sophisticated. Dad somehow accessed an old joint account from my childhood that still had my social security number attached. He attempted to take out loans, apply for credit cards, and even tried to refinance the house using forged documents. Each attempt triggered alerts I'd set up with credit monitoring services, and my lawyer friend helped me file police reports for identity theft. The paper trail of his fraud grew thicker by the day. Jake's threats materialized in more sinister ways. I started receiving anonymous calls describing what would happen to pretty nurses who didn't respect family. Dark figures appeared outside my apartment at odd hours, though they scattered when Michael's police officer friends increased patrols. Then Jake made the mistake of threatening me in a voicemail from his own phone detailing exactly how he'd make me pay. Officer Martinez was very interested in that recording, especially combined with the vandalism footage. Brittany tried a different approach: public humiliation. She showed up at the hospital during my shift with a group of friends, loudly discussing my mental problems and how I'd seduced her husband. The accusations were so absurd that even strangers saw through them, but she persisted until security removed her. She then called a news station claiming elder abuse, but the reporter who investigated quickly realized the real story was the adult daughter finally escaping her abusers. The extended family manipulation was relentless. My parents contacted every relative with their version of events, painting me as mentally ill, possibly drug-addicted, definitely unstable. They claimed I'd doctored the video, that it was all a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Some distant relatives believed them, initially sending me accusatory messages about respecting elders and honoring thy father and mother. Each message was answered with the full video and documentation, usually resulting in profound apologies. Work sabotage intensified when they discovered my schedule. Mom would call in fake emergencies during my critical procedures. Dad filed complaints with the hospital board about my unprofessional behavior in treating family. Brittany posted reviews on medical websites claiming I'd stolen medications and gave negligent care. Each lie required hours of my time to dispute energy they hoped would break me down and force me to capitulate just for peace. The house became a battleground. Despite having no legal right to the property, they attempted to break in multiple times. The first time, they claimed to need essential items, bringing a moving truck at 2 a.m. The new security system alerted police immediately. The second attempt involved Jake trying to climb through a window, resulting in his arrest. The third saw them showing up with a fake eviction notice they'd created, insisting I was the one who had to leave. Michael faced his own harassment for supporting me. Dad called his workplace, making accusations about inappropriate relationships with patients' family members. Mom sent messages to his ex-girlfriends trying to turn them against him. Jake threatened him in parking lots, always careful to avoid witnesses until he slipped up and cornered Michael at a gas station with security cameras. The resulting restraining order was just one of many legal documents accumulating against my family. My mental health became their favorite target. They called Adult Protective Services, claiming I was self-harming and needed intervention. When the social worker arrived and found me calm, healthy, and surrounded by supportive friends, she recognized the pattern of harassment. They tried to have me involuntarily committed shopping for doctors who might believe their stories. Each attempt backfired as medical professionals documented the pattern of malicious reports. Financial desperation made them increasingly reckless. Brittany tried to sell family heirlooms she claimed I'd stolen, not realizing I'd already documented every item in the house with photos and receipts. Dad attempted to claim the house was his on rental applications, trying to collect deposits from potential tenants for a property he didn't own. Mom filed a lawsuit claiming elder abuse and seeking damages, but couldn't find a lawyer willing to take such an obviously fraudulent case. The escalation peaked when they recruited extended family members still sympathetic to their cause. A cousin I barely knew showed up demanding family photos from the house. An uncle tried to remove furniture he claimed was promised to him. Each incident required police intervention, and the pile of reports grew so large that the district attorney's office began considering criminal charges for organized harassment. Through it all, I documented everything meticulously. Every threat, every lie, every attempt to destroy my life was carefully preserved. My lawyer, initially a friend doing me a favor, had to bring in partners to handle the volume of legal issues. The restraining orders alone required a dedicated paralegal, but I wasn't backing down. Each attack only strengthened my resolve and proved how right I'd been to expose them. The transformation in how others saw me was remarkable. Neighbors who'd witnessed years of my servitude offered support and surveillance footage. Coworkers created a protective network screening my calls and watching for my family in the parking lot. Even strangers who'd heard the story through social media reached out with similar experiences and encouragement. I wasn't alone anymore, and that terrified my abusers more than any legal threat could. The legal victories began rolling in like dominoes, falling in perfect sequence. The identity theft charges against Dad were the first to stick. The prosecutor, after reviewing the mountain of evidence, decided to pursue felony charges that could result in serious jail time. His confidence evaporated as he stood before the judge, no longer the controlling patriarch, but a deflated con artist caught in his own web of deception. The image of him in handcuffs being led away after his bail hearing felt like justice incarnate. Brittany's marriage imploded spectacularly during divorce proceedings that became public record. Jake, trying to save himself, revealed everything about their schemes, including screenshots of Brittany teaching him how to manipulate me more effectively. Her $60,000 in hidden savings came to light along with evidence of tax fraud where she'd claimed poverty while living luxuriously. The IRS became very interested in her finances, and suddenly she was too busy with auditors to continue harassing me. The house situation resolved definitively when Uncle Tom testified about the fraudulent will handling. The court not only confirmed my ownership, but ordered my parents to pay back rent for 5 years of illegal occupancy. The judgment amount was staggering, essentially ensuring they'd never have financial stability again. Their attempts to declare bankruptcy failed when the court deemed the debt non-dischargeable due to fraud. Every month for the foreseeable future, their wages would be garnished to pay me back. My career, which they'd tried so hard to destroy, flourished instead. The hospital administration, having witnessed the harassment campaign firsthand, promoted me to nursing supervisor with a substantial raise. They also implemented new security measures specifically to protect employees from stalking family members. My story became a teaching case in their workplace violence prevention training, helping other healthcare workers recognize and escape similar situations. The criminal convictions started piling up. Jake's vandalism and threats resulted in 18 months in jail. His tough guy persona crumbled in county lockup where real criminals had no patience for his whining about unfair treatment. Mom's false medical emergency claims led to charges of filing false reports and misuse of emergency services. Her tears couldn't save her from community service and mandatory psychiatric evaluation. The irony of her fake illnesses resulting in real mental health treatment wasn't lost on anyone. Brittany's downfall was particularly satisfying. The IRS audit revealed years of tax evasion, unemployment fraud, and unreported income. She'd been collecting benefits while working under the table, claiming hardship while living luxuriously on scammed money. The resulting criminal charges and massive fines wiped out her hidden savings and then some. Her social media influencer dreams crashed when brands discovered her legal troubles. The lifestyle she'd built on lies crumbled within months. Dad's professional destruction was swift and complete. His employer, learning about the identity theft and fraud convictions, terminated him immediately. Word spread through his industry about his crimes, making him effectively unemployable. The man who'd spent decades building a reputation as a respectable warehouse supervisor found himself blacklisted and broke. His pension, which he'd bragged could cover everything, was garnished for restitution. The control freak lost control of everything. Public vindication came through unexpected channels. The reporter who'd initially investigated Britney's elder abuse claims dug deeper and produced a feature story about financial exploitation within families. My story became the centerpiece, complete with interviews from experts who validated everything I'd experienced. The piece went viral, reaching millions who recognized their own exploitation in my narrative. The overwhelming support from strangers who'd lived similar nightmares felt like a warm blanket of validation. The ripple effects extended throughout their social circles. Church members who'd believed Mom's lies about my selfishness learned the truth and ostracized her. The country club that Dad had joined using my money revoked his membership. Brittany's friend group, seeing her true nature exposed, distanced themselves rapidly. The social status they'd built on my labor evaporated, leaving them isolated and bitter. Even their neighbors, who'd witnessed years of my car in the driveway at all hours, finally understood why. My support system strengthened exponentially. Aunt Martha became the mother figure I'd never had, offering genuine love without price tags attached. Michael and I grew closer through the ordeal, our relationship tested and proven unbreakable. True family emerged from unexpected places: co-workers who'd become protective siblings, neighbors who'd become adopted grandparents, friends who'd become chosen family. The family I'd lost was replaced tenfold by people who valued me for myself, not my services. The financial recovery exceeded my wildest dreams. Beyond the court-ordered restitution, I discovered grandmother had left more than just the house. A safety deposit box mentioned in her letter contained bonds and investments she'd hidden from my parents, now worth substantial amounts. The house itself, freed from their dead weight, became a rental property, generating steady income. For the first time in my adult life, I had genuine financial security that no one could steal. Mental liberation proved even more valuable than monetary gains. Therapy helped me recognize the programming they'd installed since childhood, the buttons they'd created to control me. Each session stripped away another layer of manipulation, revealing the person I might have been without their influence. The guilt that had chained me for decades dissolved as I understood it was manufactured, not earned. I wasn't selfish for wanting basic respect. They were monstrous for denying it. The transformation in my daily life felt miraculous. Mornings belonged to me now, not spent cooking for ungrateful users. Evenings were for relaxation or chosen activities, not mandatory servitude. Weekends meant adventures with Michael, or lazy days reading, not manufactured crises requiring my attention. My health improved dramatically without constant stress. The chronic headaches disappeared, the weight stabilized, the dark circles faded. I looked like myself again, not the hollow servant they'd created. Professional opportunities exploded once I had energy to pursue them. The advanced certifications I'd postponed for years were completed within months. Speaking engagements about workplace harassment and family exploitation became regular income sources. I started consulting for hospitals on protecting employees from predatory families. The expertise born from trauma transformed into tools to help others escape similar situations. My pain became purpose, reaching countless victims who needed to see survival was possible. The attempted reconciliations were pathetic and predictable. Dad wrote letters from prison about forgiveness and family bonds, never once acknowledging his crimes. Mom sent messages through flying monkeys about her declining health and need for her daughter's care. Brittany tried reaching out when her own life hit rock bottom, suddenly remembering sisterly love existed. I responded to none of them. The bridge hadn't just been burned. I'd dynamited it, salted the earth, and built a beautiful garden where it once stood. My life became unrecognizable from the servitude I'd known. Travel to places I'd only dreamed about while funding their vacations. Hobbies I'd abandoned for lack of time and money flourished again. Relationships with extended family members who'd chosen my side deepened into genuine connections. The promotion at work led to others, my career trajectory soaring without their weight dragging me down. I even started a scholarship fund for nursing students escaping abusive families, turning my experience into opportunity for others. The greatest triumph wasn't the money recovered or the justice served. It was the moment I realized I'd gone an entire week without thinking about them. Their voices no longer echoed in my head, criticizing my choices. Their opinions held no power over my decisions. The mental space they'd occupied for decades was renovated and filled with joy, ambition, love, and peace. I was no longer anybody's glorified servant. I was simply powerfully, finally myself. The first months of true freedom felt like learning to breathe underwater, discovering I'd had gills all along but never knew to use them. Therapy sessions with Dr. Chen revealed layers of conditioning I hadn't recognized. "You apologize for existing," she observed during our third session. "Yesterday you apologized to the coffee table for bumping into it." She was right. The words "I'm sorry" had become my default response to everything, a verbal tic programmed by decades of being blamed for others' problems. Unlearning servitude proved harder than escaping it. I'd catch myself buying extra groceries, unconsciously shopping for people who no longer lived with me. The silence at 5 a.m. felt wrong without the clatter of preparing breakfast for ungrateful mouths. Michael found me crying over a full refrigerator one evening, overwhelmed by the simple freedom of every item being something I'd chosen for myself. He held me while I sobbed about yogurt flavors, understanding it wasn't really about dairy products, but about autonomy I'd never experienced. The guilt attacks came in waves, especially during traditional family gatherings. That first Christmas morning, I woke at dawn from habit, half expecting to find a kitchen full of demands. Instead, Michael had prepared breakfast, a simple gesture that broke me completely. "You're allowed to be served too," he reminded me gently as I ugly cried over pancakes. Aunt Martha invited us for dinner where chosen family celebrated without manipulation, emergency requests, or cruel judgments. It felt like Christmas on another planet, one where love didn't require payment. Building boundaries became my full-time education. Dr. Chen taught me to recognize manipulation tactics in others, the red flags I'd been programmed to see as normal. A coworker's casual comment about needing help moving turned into a lesson in saying no without justification. "No" is a complete sentence became my mantra, though my mouth still wanted to add explanations, apologies, alternative solutions. Progress meant catching myself mid-apology, stopping the automatic people-pleasing before it could take root again. Reconnecting with abandoned dreams felt like archaeology, carefully excavating buried desires from beneath years of others' demands. I'd wanted to learn pottery before Brittany decided ceramics were messy. Mountain hiking had appealed before Dad claimed my weekends for his projects. Photography had called to me before Mom guilted me about wasting money on hobbies. Each rediscovered interest was a small rebellion, a piece of myself reclaimed from their theft. The support group I started met Tuesday evenings in the hospital's community room. Initially expecting maybe 5 participants, I was stunned when 40 people appeared for our first gathering. Their stories echoed mine with heartbreaking familiarity. The golden child and scapegoat dynamic, the financial exploitation disguised as family duty, the gaslighting that made them question their own sanity. We became each other's witnesses, validating experiences the world often dismissed as just family drama. Romance with Michael deepened into something I'd never imagined possible. Without constant crisis management, we discovered simple pleasures cooking together without rush weekend trips planned, and actually taken conversations uninterrupted by manufactured emergencies. He proposed on a random Thursday while we were doing dishes, no grand gesture needed because every day without chaos felt like a celebration. "You know your family might object to our wedding," he said. "What family?" I replied, and we laughed until we cried. The wedding planning revealed how thoroughly I'd healed. Previous me would have agonized over not inviting blood relatives, would have caved to pressure about forgiveness and moving forward. Instead, I felt only peace as we addressed invitations to chosen family, real friends, and supportive colleagues. Aunt Martha walked me down the aisle. Dr. Chen attended as an honored guest. My support group members filled the bride's side, understanding the significance of claiming joy without guilt. Professional growth accelerated without energy vampires draining my potential. The book I'd dreamed of writing materialized, The Glorified Servant Breaking Free from Family Financial Abuse. Publishers initially worried the topic was too niche. Then pre-sales exploded as thousands recognized their lives in my chapter titles. Speaking engagements expanded nationally. Universities invited me to lecture about recognizing exploitation patterns. The girl they'd called too stupid to see through their schemes was teaching others to see clearly. Forgiveness became a complex topic in therapy and support groups. Well-meaning people pushed reconciliation, insisting hatred would poison me. But Dr. Chen offered a different perspective. Forgiveness doesn't require renewed contact. You can forgive for your own peace while maintaining boundaries that protect your well-being. I found my version of forgiveness releasing the active anger while keeping the protective distance. They were forgiven, but not forgotten, and definitely not welcomed back. The final legal confrontations felt anticlimactic. Dad's appeal failed spectacularly. Brittany's bankruptcy filing was rejected. Mom's attempt to sue for emotional distress was dismissed with prejudice. Jake violated parole and returned to jail. Each legal document felt like another lock on the door between us, reinforcing boundaries they'd never respected. The lawyer handling my cases joked about getting a frequent flyer discount, but his invoice showed family rate with a knowing smile. Unexpected healing came through helping others escape. Every email from readers thanking me for showing them the way out felt like retroactive victory. One woman wrote that my story gave her courage to document her brother's theft. A man credited my book with recognizing his wife's family's exploitation. Teenagers reached out seeing their futures in my past and determined to break free sooner. Each success story healed something in me, proving my pain had transformed into purpose. The 3-year anniversary of the video revelation found me in a vastly different life. Michael and I had purchased a home with our own money, decorated with our chosen items, filled with our selected guests. My nursing career had evolved into department leadership and consulting. The book royalties funded more scholarships than I'd dreamed possible. Health markers that had concerned doctors normalized without chronic stress. Even my appearance changed, stress lines softening as genuine smiles became default. Occasional flying monkeys still attempted contact. Former church members forwarded Mom's prayer requests for her estranged daughter's hardened heart. High school acquaintances messaged about Brittany's latest crisis. Distant relatives shared Dad's prison correspondence about forgiveness. Each attempt was deleted without response. Their power to trigger guilt finally extinguished. The people who'd trained me to serve them had accidentally taught me to recognize and reject manipulation forever. My life philosophy transformed completely. Where once I believed family meant endless sacrifice, I now understood chosen bonds built on mutual respect. Where guilt had driven every decision, self-worth now guided my choices. The woman who'd apologized for breathing now spoke confidently to audiences of hundreds. The servant mentality was so thoroughly excavated that remembering it felt like recalling a movie about someone else's life. Looking back at that Thanksgiving video no longer triggered pain, only gratitude. Without their accidental revelation, I might have served them until death, never recognizing the cage they'd built around me. Their cruelty became my catalyst. Their mockery became my motivation. Their betrayal became my beginning. Every word they'd spoken in that recording had been true. I was their glorified servant. The only thing they'd gotten wrong was assuming I'd remain one forever. The ending I'd never dared imagine became my daily reality. Morning coffee on the porch without calculating others' preferences. Paychecks deposited to accounts only I could access. Holidays celebrated with people who reciprocated affection. Time belonged to me. Money stayed mine. Energy went toward chosen pursuits. The life they'd stolen was rebuilt stronger, surrounded by genuine love they'd never comprehended. Freedom tasted sweeter for having been denied, and I savored every drop. So to anyone watching who sees themselves in my story, who recognizes the exhaustion of endless giving without receiving, who feels guilty for wanting basic respect from family, you deserve better. Document everything. Build support systems. Trust your instincts about exploitation. Family that genuinely loves you won't require your destruction as proof. Real love doesn't demand servitude. You are not selfish for wanting reciprocity. You are not ungrateful for refusing abuse. You are not alone in this struggle. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is distance from those who only see your value in what you can do for them. My family accidentally showed me exactly who they were, but maybe you don't need a smoking gun video. Maybe the exhaustion is evidence enough. Maybe the anxiety of their calls tells you everything. Maybe the relief you feel when they're absent speaks volumes. Listen to those feelings. They're not betraying family. They're protecting you from those who already betrayed family bonds. This Thanksgiving, I'll sit at a table surrounded by people who see me as a person, not a service provider. We'll share food everyone contributed to preparing. No one will criticize the temperature or demand specific dishes. Gratitude will be genuine, not performative. And somewhere in a cramped apartment or homeless shelter or jail cell, the family that created a servant instead of nurturing a daughter will perhaps finally understand what they lost. Or perhaps they won't. Either way, I'll be free, and that's the only happy ending I need. Thank you for joining me on this journey from servitude to sovereignty. If my story resonated with you, if you recognized patterns in your own family dynamics, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What boundaries have you struggled to set with family? How do you handle guilt when prioritizing your own well-being? Your stories help others realize they're not alone in these battles. Please remember to like this video if it touched you. Subscribe for more stories of triumph over toxicity, and share this with anyone who might need to hear that escape is possible. May you find the strength to write your own freedom story, and may your chosen family appreciate the treasure that you are. Until next time, remember, you are worthy of love that doesn't cost you everything.